Welcome to episode 5 of Whaddya Say with DDJ. As always, I am your host, DDJ. This week's episode is a very special one, not only because it is episode 5, and 5 is kind of the first landmark number in these types of things. But I'm just going to get right to it. My guest this week is none other than former NWA World Heavyweight Champion and current member of the NWA roster, Tim Storm. Just kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome to episode 5 of Whaddya Say with DDJ, and with me tonight is my very special guest, the former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and he actually holds the distinct honor of being the oldest man to win the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Mr. Tim Storm. Tim, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thank you for letting me be here. I always look forward to visiting and talking about wrestling. It's one of it's my passion.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time to chat with me. We were just discussing right before I started recording. I can't tell you how excited I was when I got you to agree to come on. So I think I'm going to have just as much fun, if not more, than any episode I've done so far.
Well, I told you I look at this like we're all on the same team, trying to get to the same place, and I would encourage everybody to support wrestling in any shape or form. So, hey man, we're trying to get to the same place. So I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much. All right. So my first question is for you is, who is Tim Storm? Who is Tim Storm? What was it like growing up?
I grew up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, which, actually I started announcing being from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. As the NWA World Champion, I wanted to represent my hometown. I wrestled a lot here. I live in the Dallas area, and I'd always, as a local guy living here, I always kind of announced myself from Dallas, Texas, kind of get that cheap home pop. But at the point that I won the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, I started announcing from Pine Bluff, and the advantage for me, I think I told you this. I think that all of us start off as fans for the most part. We fall in love with wrestling, whatever aspect that is. But growing up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, it was centrally located. So for me, what that meant is every Saturday morning I could get Memphis wrestling. So I got Lawler and Dundee and the Boogie Woogie Man and Kamala, all those guys. In the afternoon, I got the NWA. I got TBS, Superstation, and that's the NWA. That was the Four Horsemen, Animal. I mean, it was a who's who of wrestling. I loved that. And then at night, I got World Class. So I got the Von Erichs and the Freebirds, and I mean, so I had the opportunity to see wrestling as a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid. And I got to see different aspects of it, different styles of wrestling, and I just fell in love with wrestling. And that's where one of my passions for the NWA comes from, is I love the NWA. To me, that was the best of the best.
Awesome. Now, was there anybody in particular that got you into wrestling, or did you just kind of stumble across it on your own?
No, and it's kind of funny because my mom still will say, I don't like when I would talk about what I just said, she would go, I don't remember that. I don't remember you watching wrestling. I don't know what that says, but she tells a story about my grandmother that would watch wrestling on TV, and now realize my mom is 95, which means that, if they were living, my grandparents would be 130, 140, so we're talking black and white TV, 3 channels. But she would talk about, if she walked in front of the TV while wrestling was on, my grandmother would go, I bet they heard me, because she thought that they could hear, but since she could hear them, they thought that they could hear her. But nobody really influenced me into watching it. I just found it. And I have always considered myself somewhat of an athlete. and just the entertainment value, the athleticism. It was just a great combination.
Awesome. So who were some of your early favorites? You mentioned a lot of guys just now, but like who were some of the ones that like really you felt connected to?
I connected early on watching, and again, now I'm, and honestly, I'm not naming NWA people on purpose, but I connected early on to Harley Race, just as a legitimate tough guy. And then the one that really hooked me was Dusty Rhodes. And I made this comment the other day. It never occurred to me that Dusty Rhodes didn't have a physique. That never fit into my thoughts at all. But probably by the time I was 12 or 13, I was doing my Dusty impression. And I knew, in my mind, I knew every Dusty quote, 265 pounds of screaming steel and sex appeal, all of those things. And just the charisma and the personality and it just brought me in. And there's a bunch of them. But Dusty Rhodes is the first one that just hooked me and got me in.
Awesome. So when did you make the decision to not only just be a fan, but when did you decide you wanted to get into the business?
I didn't pull the trigger on that until I was 30, 31.
Okay.
Which is an age where a lot of guys are getting out of the business. If you start at 19 or 20, you've been in the business 10 or 11 years and you've either beaten your body, to death, or you've taken your shot and it didn't pay off, whatever. And I was the vice president of a company in Sherwood, Arkansas. And I had been playing, I don't know what the right term would be, but a very competitive level of slow pitch softball where we had won, a couple of state championships. And I just decided I wanted to do something different. I wanted a new challenge. My knees were starting to bother me. And I don't know why I picked professional wrestling thinking that would save my knees, but I made the first phone call to WCW Power Plant and had some discussions with them. And I was too old to even go to the camp. But they would have been willing to take my money, because it really was. It was in the big picture of things, it was a way to make money. And while I was in the process of that, a friend of mine said, from church actually, he goes, "Hey, listen, I saw this commercial for a local TV and they advertised a wrestling school." He goes, "I'm going to be honest with you." He said the production values were not good at all. But he said, I know that, I wasn't going to walk away from my vice president position and start wrestling, because I had house payment, I had car payments, I had 2 kids, I had life commitments. But I made a phone call, and this was about 2.5 hours from my home. So that wasn't bad at all. And I thought, what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to give this a shot, and I'm a pretty decent athlete. And I thought I was old at the time, but I was young enough to get in there and do it. And it's worked out. It's worked out pretty well 26 years later.
I would definitely agree with that. So let's talk about doing my research leading up to this. You spent a lot of your early career in Texas. Talk about what that was like going through, the independent promotions in Texas and what you learned there.
I think the independent wrestling in general is the lifeblood of wrestling in a lot of cases. And I know there are a lot of recruiting going on by the big companies to bring guys in from that are athletes from other sports, and that's great too. But if you go back into the 70s, 80s, 90s, the territories was the learning ground. It's where you went to wrestle and you got experience. And when I do clinics and camps now, I tell guys all the time that one of the things that's missing is the opportunity to wrestle in front of, back then it was potentially every night, sometimes twice on the weekends. So you could go 6 or 7 nights a week in front of different audiences and get different responses and wrestle different guys. That's gone now. But, for me coming into Texas and the independents, I had walked away. When I moved here, I took another vice presidency of a company and decided it was probably time to stop chasing the dream, and thought I was done with wrestling. And that lasted about 8 or 9 months. And I was right back in deeper than ever. but that's your learning ground, and I was very fortunate. Arkansas had a couple of decent promotions. Texas has an abundance of opportunity. And even like today, there are some, obviously without the COVID, there are some prime, great promoters here that run great shows, that bring in a lot of talent, that draw big crowds. It's a great place to learn, and it's a great place to get experience, and you wrestle some of the top guys, and that all feeds into, when you don't know it at the time, but you're basically on a journey trying to get somewhere, and that was preparing me for where I was going to go. I didn't know where that was going to be, but that was preparing me for bigger things.
And you go to bigger things. One of the things I also discovered while doing some research was that you actually had a match and up for the WWE as part of their ECW brand back in July of 2007 against Big Daddy V, aka King Mabel. Tell me, how did that come about, and what was it like wrestling on that kind of stage?
It's one of those things where I had met and wrestled King Mabel maybe my very first night of my first experience with TV wrestling was for Harley Race up in Missouri. And on that particular night, I had already wrestled Butch Reed. I had a second match that I think was a handicap match. It was, a mixed tag. It was myself and I'm trying to remember. It was me and maybe Lord Littlebrook against another guy and Little Tokyo. So it was a mixed tag with a midget wrestler and another guy, and I thought I was done for the night. And Harley walked up and he said, and again realized I said this early. He was one of my early influences. So for just being there, being around him was intimidating and great all at the same time. But he walked up and I was doing a cowboy gimmick, and he goes, "Say, cowboy, you'd be willing to work a match with King Mabel at the end?" He said, "We want to add a TV match." And I went, "Absolutely." So I had worked King Mabel my first night of TV. Well, now here we go, whatever it is, 17, 15 years later. And we're, I think all of us in wrestling, you get these visions in your head of your goals and where you want to go. And until the last 5 or 6 years, there was only before, after WCW, there was really just one big company, and you wanted a shot. So I was doing the loop. I was going and doing, extra work, supplemental talent, whatever, on a fairly regular basis, trying to get an opportunity. And that was just one of those nights where they put me, it was live TV. It was ECW. It was when they were taping the ECW brand along with maybe SmackDown, I can't remember. Okay. So they would they'd take a break, change the ring out, change the apron, change the ropes, and keep the taping going in front of the live audience. It was a good experience. It made me understand that I belonged on a different level than just the independents. The match was 56 seconds, and I did exactly what I was supposed to do. Dislocated shoulder and broken nose and everything else, but that's just part of the business, and a lot of damage in those under a minute, but it was a good experience. And it's one that a lot of guys have had. You're just looking for a job. You're looking for an opportunity.
Awesome. Now, did you get any feedback from anyone after that match? And if so, what was it?
Well, I did, and that was it was all positive. I'll put it that way. Okay. I walked through the curtain, and the first person that met me in the curtain was Dusty Rhodes. And it was kind of a period where they had gone away from using extras, using supplemental talent for a long period of time, and they were just starting to do it again. So I think there was a little bit of concern about doing that. They were iffy on whether they wanted to start doing it again, and I think that I did a good enough job in getting my butt kicked that they were happy. And anyway, I walked through the curtain, and Dusty Rhodes shook my hand, and he goes, "Great job, kid." Now again, I've just brought up the two people that were big influences on me, right? So Harley Race and now Dusty Rhodes. I had a guy pull me off, and I don't want to name names, but I had a guy pull me off, and he goes, he said, why are you not under contract with us?
Wow.
And I was very honest. I said, I've got a wife and 2 kids. I have not been willing up to this point to make that commitment and walk away from my responsibility for my families. And this guy was a super nice guy. And he goes, that's a great answer. He said, he didn't say I had a contract. So don't get me wrong. I didn't walk away from a contract. But he goes, you belong here and you should pursue it if that's where you want to do. That was good. Overall, it was a really good experience. I have people now that when I broke through to this public, the one that you and I talked about, that a lot of people didn't know who I was until 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. My very first thing for the new era of NWA, for Billy Corgan, for those guys, was out at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And I cut a promo in the ring where I said, this is my mountaintop. And that's legitimate. The NWA World's title to me was the highest I could ever be. And some of the feedback that I would get from people was, oh, no, if New York called, you'd be gone in a second. And here's the thing. Now, I'm glad I got that opportunity and I got that experience. It did some things for my confidence, and it gave me a place. But were I given that opportunity today to do a 46-second squash match with somebody, I wouldn't do it. It's a different world, different time. Not that I would get that opportunity. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, everybody, when you're young and you're looking for a shot, absolutely. Later on in life, especially when you want to protect whatever bit of legacy you've got, not as big a thing.
Gotcha. So so you kind of alluded to where I was wanting to go with my next question. You mentioned the NWA. What made you decide to go to the NWA? Like, what was it? Someone on a recommendation or someone reach out?
I have been working with the NWA for a long time before any of this, and those 3 letters. When I stand on NWA Power or 10 Pounds of Gold, and I talk about what the NWA meant to me, and means to me, that's legit. Those letters have always been special to me. That was the best of the best in wrestling. Maybe, and I never know the time period for sure, but maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I was at there's a local. It's based locally, that there's a yearly meeting of people who are in wrestling. And it's just wrestlers and people who've been involved in business. And it was started by Red Bastien. It used to be called the Texas Shootout. Now it's done at the Wrestling Hall of Fame every year. But it's a get together of wrestlers. And I had a guy walk up to me, and he was a promoter, friend of mine, a guy named Robert Langdon.
Okay.
And he had another wrestler that I knew who introduced us. And he literally walked up to me and he goes, I run NWA Oklahoma and NWA Texas. He said, I want you to be my Kerry Von Erich. And again, now you're talking about another guy who you choose names. He hit one that was a home run for me. He goes, I want you on every show, and he's been true to that word, but he had the NWA Oklahoma franchise. I got booked on a show maybe 2 weeks later. I won the NWA Oklahoma heavyweight champion at the time. And that, Robert and that promotion went a long way in helping me build a reputation and a relationship with the NWA ownership. But I told a friend of mine then, I said, I don't know what I can do. But if there's anything I can do to bring the NWA back to the prominence that I grew up with, I want to do that because that's important to me. Mm-hmm. And it very quickly moved to my priority list as a number one priority. And that's way before anybody knew who I was, before 10 Pounds of Gold, before NWA Power, before becoming NWA World Champion. The NWA was my heart, and I just wanted to see if I could help.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to fast forward to October 21st, 2016. And I'm sure you probably remember that date. But for those that don't, what was it like going into that after you had beaten Jax Dane for the NWA title? What was going through your mind that night?
Well, coming into that, I had wrestled Jax, I don't know, a bunch, 6 or 8 times. And we had a few that were no contest or double DQs, but for the most part, Jax beat me. I know he beat me in Las Vegas twice, once for the world title, he beat me when I had the North American title. He unified belts at that point. I know he beat me in Vegas twice, Mississippi once. So we'd had a history. And that, to me, that's a testament to how good of a champion he is or was, because he didn't have to give me another title shot. And then when he did it, he came literally into my home field, my home court advantage. So I had my fans and my promotion. It was, I had people that would send me messages saying, "Oh man, congratulations, that's great, you deserved it." And the only answer I could get is, who deserves that, right? I mean, if that's the thing that the promotion, the NWA is the pinnacle for you to become the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, I could never justify deserving that. So then I made it a point, okay, well, I don't know if I deserved it or not, but I'm going to do everything I can to uphold the honor and the legacy. I knew one thing, because I didn't know, you said it was in 2016, so I guess I was 53 at the time. You said it on the introduction, and I didn't know it that night, but I broke Lou Thesz's record as the oldest man to hold the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. Again, I didn't know that at the time, but I didn't know you never know how long you're going to hold a title, especially one of that, history and legacy. I knew one thing though, they couldn't take my name off that list, right? I mean, once I had won it, I was on a list of people that, to me, is a who's who of professional wrestling, a list of Hall of Famers, some of the greatest names in not just wrestling history, but if you look at it, even current guys like AJ Styles, I mean, they're the top of the top. And to put my name on that list, if I'd have held it, I mean, go back and look, I think, Kerry Von Erich held it for 2 weeks. I think Giant Baba literally held it for 24 hours. But to put my name on that list, not knowing how long I'm going to hold it, I knew one thing. I'm on the list with those guys. And that alone was huge for me.
Yeah, I remember, like we were also discussing, I was telling you how I bought the NWA 10 Pounds of Gold DVD set, and on the insert, it had list everybody that's held the NWA title, and I just was in awe of reading all the names on there. You mentioned like yourself, Flair, Steamboat, Harley Race. You mentioned Lou Thesz, just all the guys. It's just that had to be so cool for you to be a part of that list.
Well, and I think especially from a wrestling standpoint, it's you have to be a different breed to be a professional wrestler. That's just a fact. Mm-hmm. You have to have pretty high pain tolerance. You have to be willing to put up a lot of stuff. You get a tendency to not be very emotional about things. And that particular night was an incredibly emotional night. I mean, Jax and I had beat each other half to death, all over the country. One of my best friends, who at the time was the head official for the NWA, he was the head of talent relations for the NWA, that I consider friends in the ring all at the same time when I won it, and I couldn't have stopped the emotion if I'd wanted to, and I didn't want to. I mean, that was the culmination of a long time of loving wrestling, and that was, I don't want to say it was the payoff, but when I say it was my mountaintop, I don't know anything that could beat that.
Oh yeah, it's, something like that, I mean, you look at the list of men who held that title, and just again, I mean, there's only a certain amount of people that can say they've done what you did, and I mean, right. And that's a very small list. So and obviously, you had a lot of title defenses, but one that I found that in particular that I discovered you had a title defense against was Jerry the King Lawler. What was it like working with him?
We've been on 100 shows together. And I won't say, hey, we're friends, but we get along fine. Always very respectful. I've never seen an issue. And that was just a deal. My answer, especially as a world champion, your job is to put people in seats, right? Well, that was a match that we knew would put people in seats. We knew that. So the experience was great. I mean, I couldn't tell you how old he is today. That was maybe I don't know, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
It was about like 3 years ago,
Yeah.
something like that.
But I mean, the man, I mean, still looks great. He looks just like he did 30 years ago. You know, if he's 68, he throws a better drop kick than I do. And that's just me laying it out there. I have nothing but good things to say about him and dealing with him on the match. I won't say it was a high flying exhibition by either one of us, but it was a good, solid match with a good story and a good finish. And I was happy with all of it. You know, I mean, I anytime you walk away as still the world champion against somebody that's a Hall of Famer, that's a pretty good deal.
I would agree with that there. So obviously, you know, a lot of people you hear, you know, when you become the champion, like you have an insane schedule. And that was one of the things, and you'll notice I've referenced a lot, you know, 10 pounds of gold a lot, because it was really helpful in me doing some research. So what was your schedule like as the NWA champion?
Here's the way the old regime was set up. They sold you paid to be a franchise of the NWA. Really what you were paying is to be able to use those three letters in your promotional, and then there were requirements that had to be met. One of those requirements was you had to use one of the champions. You had to book one of the champions, your choice, 3 times a year. One of those was the world champion. Okay. So if you have 50 franchises, so you're at that point, and it didn't always work out, but at that point you could look and say, well, that's 50 bookings right there in a year as the champion to defend. And that's just going to those one time a year. It was a really good schedule. I mean, it was tough at times because, you know, when you go in there, you're walking in with a lot of responsibility with what you're representing. You have to walk in with basically you have to be the champion. You know that you're going to get one of the best guys on their roster every time. You know that the expectation is that your match should be the best match of the night every time. You're always going to be the main event. The pressure's on you to put people in seats or not put people in seats, right? I mean, it's definitely, you know, the pressure comes with it, but that's what you want. And if you're in any athletic activity, if you're a basketball, Michael Jordan said he always wanted to take that last shot, right? You want to be the quarterback on the 20-yard line that's got to go 80 yards in 2 minutes, right? That's what you want. So I relished in that, you know, and I'm not going to say every match was a 5-star match, but I was very aware of what my job was, and I kind of approached it and again, not comparing myself in any way, but I tried to use the Ric Flair model, which means when I would go into every promotion, my job, as I saw it, was to make the guy that I wrestled, make everybody in the building believe that he could have beat me. He had a chance, and that makes him better. It makes the promotion better, because if I'm not coming back there, they have a guy that almost became world champion that could be at the top of their roster. You know, so you go in and you know every night you got to give your best effort. You can't have a bad match. That's just the way it is.
Gotcha. So now, you know, now Billy Corgan comes into the picture and purchases the NWA. When did you first hear about it, and did you have any concerns when you heard the news?
Yes and yes. Well, I mean, again, I was on to be the world to hold the world title is a big deal, and that's a choice that the owners and the executives that are, you know, that are a part of the management team have to feel comfortable with you. We didn't know that they were even in discussion about selling it, and you know, the former ownership had signed a no disclosure with Billy, so they couldn't talk about it. And just the way that the timing of it fell, most of the fans probably have heard of the Cauliflower Alley Club. It has a yearly meeting in Las Vegas. It's a big deal. They do, you know, they induct people into the Hall of Fame. It's like a 3-day event, and it's huge. I've been to many of them. That particular year, I wasn't wrestling there. You know, they have like 3 shows. They have a big show every night, and I wasn't wrestling that year, so I didn't go. So I was legitimately sitting in my classroom as a teacher, on like a Friday afternoon. And I think the kids may have been taking a test. So I was sitting at my desk and my phone was on my desk, and it literally just exploded. I mean, it was just, I have it muted. I don't want to, it's not just, it can't be a distraction for the kids, right?
Absolutely.
But it's like text, phone call, text, phone call. Because the word had leaked out that Billy Corgan was buying the NWA. And the world champion was sitting at his day job, finding out just like everybody else. The NWA franchise members were at the Cauliflower Alley Club planning on having just our normal meetings about, direction and all those kind of things. And that most of the franchises were represented. And those guys were like, okay, did you know about this? I had no clue. I know that I got two of my closest friends. One was James Beard again, another guy. Both sent me messages that they were decision makers. And they said, didn't know this was coming. I'm going to find out. I'll let you know. And all I could say was, appreciate it, right? I mean, my first thought was, well, this has been a good run. New ownership. I had never met Billy before. And my thought was, I'm sure those guys, I knew their history. I knew that they had been involved with Impact and some different things. And I figured, okay, they're probably going to want to bring in somebody they're more familiar with, somebody younger, probably somebody who may have a bigger TV name. So that was my first thought. And I answered myself like I normally do with whatever they want to do. I'm just going to handle this in the most professional way I know how. So whatever that was, as long as I handled it professionally, I was going to be okay with it.
Awesome. So now we're at the point where Nick Aldis is in the picture. And I know you had, I believe, one successful title defense against him. And then unfortunately you dropped the title to Nick. And he's gone on, obviously, to basically, for the last almost 3 years combined, be the NWA champion. How do you feel he's done as the guy for the National Wrestling Alliance?
Impeccable. Fantastic. And I don't want to, it seems like I do this when somebody asks me the question. I don't want to make this let me put Nick over time, but that I don't feel like I have a choice. Nick is the complete package. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's every time I've seen, which now has been, I don't know how many hundreds of times, he's always taller than I think he is, right? I mean, I'm 6'3", Nick's probably 6'4", and if you see him, you don't think that, he dresses impeccably. Obviously, he's got that. With that British accent, almost anything he says sounds more intelligent than anything this guy from Arkansas could say. He can go out and cut great promos. If for the first season of NWA Power, he wrestled as a face and went out and cut amazing promos, had great matches, had great title defenses. The second season, they turned on me, and
I remember that.
Walked out as a heel and couldn't get the promo out because the fans were booing him so much. So he's worked both sides successfully. He's represented the company. He's carried it on his shoulders. He's a technical wizard in the ring when he wants to be. He's a brawler when he wants to be. And at 6'4", will go up to the top rope and drop an elbow. Again, I don't want to just make this into tell everybody how great Nick is, but he is. He's just that good. He's a true champion.
Yeah, he is. So one of the things, though, going into the night you dropped the title to Nick Aldis is that I believe your ribs were taped up, and that was due to an attack or a match you had previously had with Josephus. Mm-hmm. And then basically not too long after you dropped the NWA title, you had an empty arena match against Josephus inside the Impact Zone. How did that come about, and what was that like?
It was just kind of the story arc. Josephus had kind of the way it had happened was he had been wanting to challenge for the title and never really got the world title shot. I lost to Nick in New Jersey, and prior to losing, I took a couple of pretty vicious ladder shots to my ribs. out in LA from Josephus that did some legitimate damage. Now, you know, as a champion, you can't make excuses. That's just not your job, right? Because I had a lot of people say, you need to take, you know, a month or two off and get healthy. And my response was, Harley Race didn't take time off, right? I mean, if you're the champion, if you're booked, you go defend the championship. So I defended the championship and Nick beat me. That's it. No excuses. He was, you know, he is as good as I just said he was. He beat me clean. There was nothing else to it. Mm-hmm. And then kind of the way the story went was Josephus started pretty much stalking and trying to get some type of match. And the challenge was if I had a title defense coming up against Nick, and I wasn't going to give that up. I wanted my title, you know, I wanted a rematch against Nick. And Josephus and his spiritual advisor tried to pay a visit to my daughter in the middle of the night, and that was kind of what lit the fuse. And I accepted the match. I put my rematch on the line, and we had that at an empty arena match, which was in retrospect, it was a great experience. One of the most challenging things I've ever done. At that point, I had done a lot of matches of almost every kind, but an empty arena match. Well, today, you know what? We were just ahead of our time because now it's what every match is, right? But
pretty much, yeah.
You know, to wrestle in front of no fans in a large place with no energy to feed off of, it was, you know, I took it as, okay, well, I'm just going to be aggressive. I'm going to go after him, and I'm going to fill this lack of energy from a crowd with my own energy. Great experience. Very happy with the way the match went, except for the finish, and changed my career from a physical aspect. I don't know. You may have the dates there. That's been a couple 3 years ago.
Something like that, I believe it's been, yeah.
And I don't think I will ever recover physically from the last bump of that match. I mean, my back has never been the same and will never be the same again. And that's the first ladder didn't hurt. Landing on the second ladder that I didn't know was there was the one that did the damage. And again, my own fault, right? I'm the one that dropped the ladder there, but it's very happy with the match. Not so happy with the way the finish at the end.
Gotcha. Okay, so now we're obviously going into, the full-fledged Billy Corgan era of the NWA, and Power comes on, and he's bringing back studio wrestling. When you heard the concept of Power and that Billy Corgan was bringing studio wrestling back to television, or in this case, YouTube, what did you think?
At this point, I had been with Billy and Dave and the NWA long enough that I just trusted them, right? They're from the very beginning, the way they've approached all this was under promise and over deliver, right?
Right.
So when they started talking about studio wrestling, that's what I grew up on. So I had a good concept of what that meant. But I know that the day that I walked into that building for the first time, it exceeded mine and everybody else's expectations. And I was like a kid on Christmas to walk down the aisles, elevated aisles, and to see the blue and gold ring aprons, to see the flags hanging, to see the podium, and David kind of sent me some sneak peeks as far as here's kind of what we're expecting. And it was a combination of old school and new school, right? But to walk down there, the feeling that I had, it was amazing. And I've made this statement for a long time. I felt like I was kind of, with the NWA, I felt like I was a guy that was waving the NWA flag by myself and a couple of friends. And I don't want to say keeping it alive. We were the NWA guys. And I thought that once I got there, I realized that, every man and woman that walked into that building that night or that day for the TV tapings had the same reaction. And that's everybody from guys who have been wrestling for a long time, and everybody on this, that's listening knows, Jim Cornette, who'd been in wrestling for 40 years, we all had the same reaction. And for me, it still is like, I'm home, I mean, it was just an amazing thing. So I didn't know what to expect from studio wrestling. I didn't know how the crowd would react. I didn't know how fans would react, which has been the biggest thing. And I don't mean like the in-studio fans, but the response we got to NWA Power, it exceeded every expectation.
Yeah, I remember seeing, like, when I started seeing the pictures and the preview videos and the trailers and stuff, I got giddy because, like I said, again, I'm a huge fan of old school wrestling. And I grew up, I think studio wrestling had kind of already passed on when I started getting into wrestling, but going back, via the WWE network and seeing tapes and DVDs and stuff, and just I really enjoyed and loved the intimacy that the studio wrestling provided. And that just seeing the setup and stuff, it brought all that back to me. And it has not disappointed since it's been on. So now, everybody pretty much is aware that, this whole pandemic thing has really changed a lot of things and affected just about every wrestling company in the world. How has the pandemic affected not only your professional career, but also the NWA? Like what's going on right now?
On a personal level, and I don't want to bring it down. I don't want to bring the show down, but from a personal level, I've looked at this. I've never, for a long time, I don't know how much longer. I've said I don't know how much longer I have in the business. I don't, and I still don't. I have no plans right now of being done. But let's say, for example, if I had said I have a year left when this year started, the pandemic has stolen 6 months of my career, which, half the career that I may have left. You can't be bitter about that because it's not under anybody's control. It's just what it is.
Exactly.
From a big wrestling standpoint, I was saying back in January on interviews that this was one of the best times I've ever seen in wrestling, as far as opportunity and as far as being a fan. If you're a wrestler, you had more places to choose to work, which is what we need as wrestlers, than in any time I've known in 20 years. As a fan, you had more options and more choices to watch wrestling. And I'm that guy that I want everybody to succeed. I want anybody who loves wrestling enough to get out there and do it. I want them to be successful. Every promotion, I'm never going to bash another promotion. I want them to succeed. Well, look where we're at now. I mean, the big two or three are struggling to make it work, and they're trying to find ways. And I think in the big picture, they're losing some of the fan base just because I don't think anybody realized we never thought about what it's like to not have fans at a live event. From an NWA standpoint, I know that next week, I think next Tuesday, I think it's the 15th, will be the first of any type coming back. The NWA has teamed with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, with I think it's a promotion, a studio called Thunder, that they're going to be running a pay-per-view in conjunction with several other entities, which anything at this point is a positive because we had such good momentum, that now has gone. And, Billy's statement from the beginning has been, we want to come back when it's safe for the fans and when it's safe for the wrestlers. And, obviously he's sticking by that because that's the smart thing to do.
Well, I can't wait for that to happen because I was actually having a discussion with my friend Greg, who's a huge NWA fan, about making a road trip to some tapings once you guys, are back, back doing the studio shows and that. So I definitely hope that comes sooner rather than later. So I know a lot of people know, but I don't think everybody knows. And you made a couple of allusions. You alluded to it a couple of times that your day job is that you are a teacher. And obviously this pandemic has brought forth a lot of challenging times for all the teachers out there. What are you doing to basically make it as easy as possible for you to do your job under these current conditions?
I think teachers across the U.S. right now, it's a challenge, and everybody's in a different situation. My personal situation was, I think we shut down the second week of March and didn't go back for the rest of for the rest of last year. That was a challenge. I think my gift as a teacher, the thing I do well, is I have good classroom management. I stand up in front of kids. I try to connect with them. I try to communicate with them. All that was gone. My weakness as a teacher was I avoided technology. And I did, sometimes I did that on purpose. Well, now all of a sudden my job is not to manage a classroom or to stand up and talk. It's technology, right? So completely out of my comfort zone. This year we came back, and I have now been at school, I don't know, 3.5 weeks, something like that, maybe 4, all online. But I'm sitting in my classroom doing online teaching. I'm more comfortable. I've kind of I understand what my job is, and I do the best I can. Next week, kids will show up. The ones that are choosing traditional is what is being called now, traditional learning, will show up for the first time next Tuesday. Will be our first day of school with kids in class. I've got mixed feelings. I think the way on the whole pandemic thing, there's no good answer. There's no, here's what has to happen.
Right.
I think from a teaching aspect, I think many people, including myself, I would not learn well if I were looking at a computer. I need to be in class, and I need to hear things and see things and hands-on. I think that's a better way to learn. So from that aspect, I think kids need to be in school. On the other side of that is, how are we going to protect our students with COVID? I'm now 56. How do you? I'm in that danger zone now. If I've got 140 kids a day that I'm coming into contact with, how do I protect myself? And the answer to all that is, I show up and I do my job, and I'm going to teach to the best of my ability, and I'm going to do everything I can to protect them and protect myself. And we'll just roll and see how it goes, because that's what I got to do.
And it's just a lot of and I appreciate you being a little bit, open about that, because a lot of the concerns that you have, I also have, because I'm a father myself. I have a 5-year-old little boy who just is doing distance learning right now. He just started kindergarten. My wife is actually a school bus driver, so she sees a lot of the same concerns and that kind of thing and stuff. And I want to not only thank you for what you're doing for your kids, but to all the teachers out there listening, thank you for, sticking with it. Thank you for, doing the best you can to educate our youth, because we need it now more than ever. One of the things, I'm going to go back again to the 10 pounds of gold. And this was probably one of my favorite things that I saw throughout what I've seen so far. And that was when you were the champion, you had the belt on your desk. What was it like, when the kids would walk into your classroom and they'd see that belt? What were some of the reactions they had?
Well, I guess this may be a disappointing answer for you. I really work hard at trying to keep those worlds separate. Okay. So I think there might have been one day when I had, I may have taken that belt one day along with another title that I had that was the Indy World Championship that I won with Harley Race. But for the most part, I don't think the kids have ever walked in and seen that belt on my desk. Okay.
Okay.
Here's the thing for me. I believe teaching is very important. And I am not afraid to use the wrestling connection if I think it will connect with a kid. But in most cases, 98% of the cases, if I allow them to start talking about wrestling, we're done for the day on history, right? So I separate the two. I tell them what I do at the beginning, and I also tell them, but we're probably not going to talk about that in class. If you want to talk to me after class, I'll try to answer your questions. But this is U.S. history, and in here, I'm not Tim Storm, I'm Tim Scoggins, and I want you to focus on that. And the other part is I won't even show pictures. My joke is, in my mind, the worst thing I can do is to show a classroom full of 13 or 14-year-olds, me in a pair of wrestling trunks. I'm just saying, regardless of what kind of shape I'm in, that is not what they need to be picturing when I'm teaching the Constitution or the Declaration. Mr. Scoggins is there, and that's my job there. And then on the weekends, I'm not ashamed to be a wrestler in the week. I'm not ashamed to be a teacher on the weekends. But I separate those two as clearly as I can.
Gotcha. So, oh God, I was trying to think here. So what did you anything that you've learned like throughout all the years as being a professional wrestler? Was there anything that you learned that you turned around and used to apply to your job as a teacher?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think especially as I have gotten older in the ring, I've kind of I guess what I'm known for now as much as anything is my promos. And in essence, when you stand up in front of a classroom full of kids and you start talking about something you're passionate about, you're basically cutting a promo. And I don't know which feeds the other. I don't know, when I'm cutting a promo, the teacher in me comes out. But when I'm teaching, sometimes the wrestler comes out. And it's just like when you connect with an audience and you're telling, you're cutting a promo about something and you're passionate about it, you can feel that audience. And the same thing with the classroom. If I'm talking about something and I'm saying, this is what that means and this is why it's important, if you've got them or not, right? You've connected. And the other, people don't know this, but I worked heel for a really long time. And I'm not, I work heel more as a teacher than I do face. So I am not afraid to go into, heel Tim Storm mode if I need to with a student. If I need to, it's kind of a running joke with teachers. If you got to give them the teacher look or, the teacher stare, I'm not afraid to lead in and go, are we developing a problem here?
Ooh, I just got chills.
So, but I'm just saying that's a crossover. You can do those with both because, hey, if you're standing in the ring with a guy who's 7 foot, 400 pounds and you can't back down, you better believe what you're saying, right? There's a crossover there.
Gotcha. So a couple more questions here and we'll wrap it up. If you could have a match against any former NWA champion in his prime, I think I know who your answer is going to be, but I still want you to answer it. Who would it be and why?
I could throw you a curveball here. If you
Please.
Well, here's the curveball. Give me Nick Aldis for the title because I want to win it again.
Ooh, I was definitely not expecting that, but
here's the answer that you were expecting, and you're right, by the way. Give me Dusty Rhodes. Give me a bull rope match in front of 20,000 people in the Superdome in his prime. And it doesn't have to be a bull rope match. It doesn't have to be gimmick. But I don't think there's very few people who are as great of an entertainer as Dusty Rhodes in his prime. And I told you that I connected with him pretty early on. That would be a lot of fun.
I could imagine that. Yeah. And you just talked about how I think Dusty's probably, I would consider him, and I know a lot of people would agree, he's probably the greatest babyface wrestling's ever seen.
Yeah. There are guys that you could make an argument for, right? But as a fan growing up, I completely agree with that. I don't want, anytime you start making a list, you're going to leave people off that deserve it, but
right.
Hey, there's a lot of people that Ricky Morton's one of the greatest baby faces of all time, but but there's a list there that you could make, but man, give me Dusty in his prime and I'll work heel just to get the experience. Just to get it. Cause he was all charisma. I loved it.
Yeah, he was. All right. So my last question is how's Mama Storm doing?
Appreciate you asking. She's doing good. Mom is 95.
God bless her.
She'll be 96 this year.
God bless her.
And her term all the time is because I talk to her every day. And her term all the time, Mom, how are you feeling today? I just don't have any steam. That's what she says. And then she'll usually follow it up with, I guess that's how you feel when you're almost 100, right? So she's doing well. The doctors continue to tell her how healthy and how great she's doing. And then she'll always follow that up with, but I don't feel like I'm doing great. She doesn't understand what 95 should feel like. She thinks she ought to feel like she's 50 or 60. I haven't gotten to see her much. It's not just me. It's everybody out there that has an older loved one. It's this struggle.
It is.
especially as a teacher, my summers was when I could spend time with her. But if I take something there and she catches it at 95, then I don't know how I could live with that. Right. So
I
haven't
agree.
seen her much. I actually went last weekend, and I wanted to spend time with her before my students came back, because I feel at that point that I'm more exposed, which would be her more exposed.
Right.
But she continues to amaze me, amaze the world. She's healthy for 95. She's smart. She's sharp. She doesn't think she is, but I tell her every day she is. She's a wonderful lady. She's my hero.
And I love hearing the kind of relationship that you have with your mom, because I feel I have the same type of relationship with my mom. I mean, I try to talk to her every day as much as possible and stuff. Okay, so this is actually, I do have a couple more questions here. What did it feel like the first time you heard a Mama Storm chant?
I'm a big believer. Okay, another Dusty thing. Dusty has said that you shouldn't rehearse your promos, because and I don't rehearse. Now, I have an idea of what I want to say, but you don't. If you rehearse your promos over and over and over, you lose the true emotion, the passion of what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that promo was kind of an ode to Dusty, because Dusty always used to talk about, his mom, right? I mean, son of a plumber, but he was so. When I made that comment, because I've gone back and watched it, I paused for a second, not expecting any reaction at all, right? So, and you learn in wrestling, if you do something in the ring and the crowd responds, you give it a minute to breathe. And well, the crowd responded, and I start to talk, and it grows. So I get quiet, and it grows. And I know that I finished the promo out. I got in the ring, and it was with mixed feelings on my part, and here's what I mean. I think I got in the ring. I think it was against Nick. So Brian Hebner was the ref, and I think I walked over to Brian, and the crowd was chanting Mama Storm, and I think I said something to be funny, like, "Am I gonna regret that?" Somehow I just put my mom over bigger than myself, and then as working a match, when you're hurt and you're into the deal. If you're getting beat up, what you really want is for them to cheer you, right?
Right.
What I got was Mama Storm. They're cheering for my mom. And I get that, because what they're thinking is, if my mother is my motivation, they're going to motivate me, right? So
right.
I wish that I could tell you, you know what, Dennis, I went into this with a plan. And I knew that when I said that, the crowd, I had no clue. I just go out there and speak my heart. And the crowd connected with it, thank goodness. And, thankfully for them, they made it something, because it was something I said, and they made it, they brought that to life.
I love that. Now, what was Mama Storm's reaction to when she first heard the Mama Storm chant?
I'm very protective of my mom.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is, like, she doesn't like to see me get hurt, right? So she's not interested in watching a lot of the matches.
Okay.
I played her the Mama Storm chant and showed her the Mama Storm pin, and I got her a shirt. And even like this last
behind you.
Yeah, well, and even this last weekend, it was funny, because I was talking to her, and I had just done an interview with two guys from Yorkshire, England, who brought up Mama Storm. Mm-hmm. And I was on Twitter, and a friend of mine, a lady from Scotland, had bought a Mama Storm shirt. So I was sitting there, and I was going, "Mom, you're not going to believe this, but you've got these two guys in England, and there's an England, Arkansas." So I had to clarify, "Mom, there's these two guys in Yorkshire, England, that wanted me to tell you hi, and I want to show you this picture, because this lady from Scotland bought your shirt." And my mom grew up in Okolona, Arkansas, a population of like 82 or something, and she goes, "You mean like people other places know who I am?" And I'm like, I said, "Mom, you have millions of fans. You just don't know it." And she goes, "Okay, I believe you, but I just don't." She doesn't get the concept. She's not a wrestling fan. She wishes that I would stop doing it, because she's afraid her baby's going to get hurt. So, but she always says, "Well, tell them I love them too. So that's pretty much the response I get on those.
That's awesome. All right, so one more thing, and then we'll wrap this up. How can people reach you on social media, and also where can people go to buy Tim Storm merchandise?
The best way for merchandise, and boy, I probably should do something different, but you go to the NWA website, and they've got 2 different shirts. They've got the pins. They've got I think there's probably trading cards or something coming out. I mean, there's a lot of merch there. I wish I could tell you just send it to me and I'd take care of it, but I probably won't. So it's better that I do it the right way. Tim Storm 01 on Instagram, and Tim Storm NWA on Twitter. You can usually find me on there's Tim Storm on Facebook, but to be honest, I think I've got 5,000 people and can't take any more, so I probably won't see it on there. But any of those you can find me. I just appreciate fans. I try to respond when I can, and the fact that somebody cares is a big deal. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you. Reaching out to you to do this was just, you know what? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, so I'm going to take this one. And then when I heard back from you, I was just blown away. So I really appreciate, you taking the time just to respond to me. And I also want to thank you for taking time out of your day to chat with me this evening. It's been a lot of fun, and I can't thank you enough for doing this for me.
Well, first of all, let me give credit to my friend in New York who said, hey, you should add your email to Twitter so people get in touch with you. And I had never done that before. So, she knows who she is for that. And yeah, like I said, man, we're all in this together, especially during this COVID thing. This thing needs to go away. We need to get back to wrestling the way it was so we can all enjoy it. I appreciate you taking the time. I've enjoyed it. And hey, man, let's everybody out there support wrestling, support promotions near you, buy the guys merch that they are passionate about what they do. It's a sacrifice physically. Support local wrestling. Support guys like this that are out there promoting it and trying to make it a better place. So I appreciate you having me on, and I enjoyed every second of it.
Awesome. Well, Tim, once again, thanks again, and have a great evening.
Thank you, man. Appreciate your time.
Thanks again to Tim Storm for taking time out of his day to sit down and talk with me. I really enjoyed what he had to say, and I thought his perspectives on teaching were really good. It was a huge honor to get Tim on here, as I've become a really huge fan of his after following his story on the 10 Pounds of Gold series as well as NWA Power. You can get the DVDs at the NWA shop. You can also get your Tim Storm merch there as well, including the Mama Storm shirt. Or you can view the end episodes of NWA Power and the 10 Pounds of Gold series on their channel on YouTube. For my shout out tonight, I am going to give a special shout out to all of the teachers out there, because without you right now, our kids wouldn't have anyone to educate them. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for putting your lives on the line, especially in this day and age with this pandemic. And keep doing your thing, because I fully support you. The What Do You Say with DDJ show is a proud supporter of all the teachers out there. One last thing before we go, Tim Storm has a message he would like to deliver to all of you. And after that, have a great night.
This is Tim Storm, former NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. You're listening to What Do You Say with DDJ. If you love professional wrestling, this is where you need to get your information. Don't miss this.